I'm basically here to say that the era of angle racing in whoops is over. Let me just put it this way. At the very top of whoop racing, it's going to be dominated by acro pilots from now on. There was a big invasion of acro pilots at the very top.
It was.
And do you think it's safe to say that we're at an inflection point in technology where it might be an advantage for the top pilots, not for everyone, to be flying acro and racing whoops?
I definitely would have to say that.
The new era has arrived where the equipment has reached a point that we can declare the era at the very, very top, at least, that angle whoop racing is over. Yeah, low production value. I'm not a YouTuber or anything. I just kind of do this for my diary.
Definitely, I mean, T-Dog stepped it up, and angle mode is being questioned right now. I mean,
I think it's safe to say that we can declare the era of angle whoop racing over. Do you agree?
I still think it'll definitely be part of whoop racing. A lot of people will stick with it, but I personally really love acro, and I feel like it gives me just a little bit of an advantage over angle mode pilots, especially on certain pitch down moves. And
right, this video is incredibly late. That was meant to be published right after Whooptopia, but I was going to include an interview with Mason, Hyper, who's one of the fastest pilots on Earth in any drone, and unsurprisingly is one of the fastest whoop pilots as well. And when he went to Hooptopia, he said it was actually his mission at Whooptopia to try to convince top pilots to switch to Acro. And as usual, Mason is someone who had a lot of thoughts about it. He's a thoughtful guy, and I was supposed to interview him. When he told me he was ready, I try to avoid using Facebook, so I don't have notifications on, and I missed his message. And then we missed each other a couple days, and then it just didn't happen. So this video is extremely late. I had the Pura Vida Costa Rican spec race to help out with, and I've got main China sweeper hanging out with me for a couple weeks racing in my club, so that's why I'm doing this as soon as I woke up. They're still not up, and I have a little bit of time before we go out to the track. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about was that an inflection point occurred in whoop racing. I'm basically here to say that the era of angle racing in whoops is over. And let me qualify that by saying, it's really just for the very, very top of top whoop racing. For 99% of people, they're going to be better off flying angle whoops when they race. It'll be easier for them. Acro is going to be harder for them. Not that, that's not a worthwhile challenge. There will be some that argue that it's precisely because it's harder that they should tackle that challenge. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. What I am going to say is that until recently, even though acro was possible on whoops, the top races and top racing in the world was largely being won on angle mode. There was one or two pilots breaking in and almost winning, but it was still the case that the fastest pilots in the world in whoop racing were racing angle, and that was for various reasons, not the least of which that the very top pilots in the world tend to focus on larger drones. Not that they don't love whoops as well, but their competition, their primary competition tends to be, either they're racing drone racing league 7-inch drones, or open class 5-inch, or spec class 5-inch. So because of that, the competition in whoop racing, generally misses some of the top pilots who are too busy for that. But this year, I guess it's happened before. Vanover came to the Whoop Invitational and Tiny Whoop Invitational race and crushed that. A good pilot is a good pilot, and the skills translate pretty much anywhere. Min-Chen's at my house, and he grabs my radio, flips it upside down, tweaks some things to make it mode 1, and yeah, he's flying my whoops upside down through his head, flying my 3D airplanes in my house, the skills translate. The bottom line is that, good pilots are good pilots. I think that's the first takeaway anyone should have, that no matter what you're flying, no matter what way you're flying, angle mode, not angle mode, skill will shine through. So that's the biggest factor, obviously. It's not what your setup is, what your configuration is, what your gear is, it's your skill. So anywho, as I said, this year, a bunch of top pilots who aren't, typical drone whoop racers like Mason, Levi, these are some of the monsters of 5-inch racing, the alien class, as I like to call these guys. I tend to generally reach top 40, 50, but the difference between me and these guys who are top 10 is incredibly different. It's just as big as the difference between me and the people who think I'm fast. So these guys came in, and as anyone should expect, they crushed it. They didn't need a lot of practice. They just grabbed their whoops, flew them in acro mode, and they destroyed this. And T-Dog, who has been racing whoops for a while, he actually just made a statement. Anthony has AK, has won his event. It's his local event, Whooptopia, and it's kind of growing in competition every year. But even though some of the best pilots in the world haven't always made it to there, there's always one or two pilots who are like, well, could they have beat AK? I had to give it to him. Like that was the de facto whoop champion of the U.S., the winner of the Whooptopia race. It's just simply the biggest, most competitive whoop race around right now. So he had won that 3 years in a row, I believe, and this year T-Dog came in and just Iron Man the fuck out of the competition and, won the whole thing.
All right, AK. First of all, thanks for another great event. Whooptopia is getting better and better every year, and it's already the best event ever. This year, okay, well, there's a little bittersweet news. It's the first time you've ever lost, right? You had some bad luck, got stuck under a table. Yep. But other than that, there was some interesting developments, wouldn't you say, in near the top of in this race? Unlike any time before, there was a big invasion of Acro pilots at the very top.
There was.
And do you think it's safe to say that we're at an inflection point in technology where it might be an advantage for the top pilots, not for everyone, to be flying Acro and racing whoops?
I definitely would have to say that. And the big reason why I have to say that is not only because, one, there's crazy fast acro pilots, but two, I really pushed myself to my max limit in qualifying, and every pilot above me that qualified higher than me was an acro pilot. Every single one of them. Yep. I qualified 5th, and there was 4 acro. I qualified, fourth or 5th? I can't remember now. No, I was 4th. Yeah, I qualified 4th. Orange Stuff was 5th. But all 3 above me were all acro pilots. I already switched to acro in the sim and about a month ago, and I already been telling everyone about a month now I am going to switch to acro after this race. There's just some maneuvers that Angle just can't pull off. So if you want to compete at the top, the acro is the way with how our gear performs nowadays. So
it is. Speaking of the sim, would you say that it's a good training tool for whoops? I don't. You do?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
In both angle mode.
Whoop Go and as well as Velocitron, both 2 very awesome simulators to practice on. Yeah, both for acro, angle. It's great.
And do you think it's going to be a hard transition for you? Obviously, you're gonna be worse for a little while than you are in the angle mode,
no doubt.
Right?
It's going to be tough for sure. Yeah, no doubt. I definitely think it's going to take a few months to get used to, and then once you get used to it, then it's going to be perfecting it, right? Getting faster and better, tighter lines. So it's going to be a tough transition, but it'll be a fun one nonetheless.
All right. Well, you heard it from the horse's mouth. AK's been the champ at whoop racing for many, many years, and it took Acro to dethrone him this year. So I think it's safe to say that the era of angle racing at the very, very top might be over. All right, thanks, man.
And he was flying, way faster than anyone else, and he just kind of proved that, no matter how much people ground on angle, that there's another gear you can get on acro, and that the whoops are finally able to actually handle that. The motors have high enough kV. Basically, the power to thrust ratio. Man, it's windy out here. You might not be able to hear any of this. I don't care. It's still going to go out this way. This is a late video, like I explained. But anyway, the power to thrust, the power to weight ratio, the thrust to weight ratio of whoops has been improving and improving. We're just getting more powerful, more capable gear that can handle some of the extremities of Acro a bit more.
All right, Levi. So, like we've been talking about, I think there's an inflection point this year, and I think it's safe to say that we can declare the era of angle whoop racing over. Do you agree?
I still think it'll definitely be part of whoop racing. A lot of people stick with it, but I personally really love Acro, and I feel like it gives me just a little bit of an advantage over angle mode pilots, especially on certain pitch down moves, and you can just carry your momentum a lot more. So.
And the equipment is basically advanced to the point where at the very, very top level, it's actually a disadvantage to be flying angled, wouldn't you say?
I would say it is, yeah, definitely a little bit of a disadvantage. But yeah, the whoops fly so good now. I just picked up a bind and fly from Newbie Drone and put some motors on it, and yeah, it was great. It flew perfect. So.
And what kind of setup are you using? Are you using Betaflight 4.3?
I'm using 4.2 still.
Okay.
And I'm using AK's tune. So.
Okay. So you haven't tried the new preset for it yet?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna go. Yeah, after this race, I have seen that I need to try a lot of stuff. So.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna go try some new tunes. Yeah, just mess around with my setup, and hopefully next year I can get really dialed in.
But you didn't even practice very much, and you came in here and were able to fly pretty well, right?
Yeah, I was really surprised with my performance, and kind of pretty proud of how I did. So it was good. Velocitron helped a lot, just flying whoops, but I felt like it was pretty easy to transition from 5-inch to whoops in Acro mode.
Yeah, that's my motivation. I'm going to try to make the switch this year too. Thanks a lot. We're declaring this a new era. Thank you again, and talk to you guys later.
See you guys.
All right, Agilis, we just finished a monster marathon of team racing. That was a lot of fun. You got second place in the most competitive whoop race in history. And there was something special about this race, which I think, and maybe you can tell me if you disagree or not, that this was an inflection point where I think the technology is caught up and the era of angle racing being the fastest is over. What do you think?
It's getting interesting for sure. I don't know if it's soon enough or close enough to say that Acro is for sure taking the win, but definitely, I mean, T-Dog stepped it up, and angle mode is being questioned right now. I mean,
for the first time.
Yes, definitely.
At the top level. I think there's always going to be a place for angle in racing. I honestly think 99% of pilots are better off on angle mode. But at the very top level, does it look to you that to get to that T-Dog level, you have to go Acro at this point?
It's something I'm asking myself, and I think I'm gonna. I'm definitely gonna train Acro and see what happens.
All right, it's gonna be a tough transition for all of us who are racing on angle because we're gonna be worse for a long time before we get better. So it's a tough trade-off. I know Daniel said he doesn't think he's gonna do it right away, but AK said he's definitely doing it. He said he saw T-Dog and he said he can't get faster than that unless he gets, to Acro. So, all right, well, congrats again on your second place in the most competitive race in history of whoop racing. Thanks, man. All right, T-Dog, you won the most competitive whoop race in the history of whoop racing, and I think it's safe to say that the new era has arrived where the equipment has reached a point that we can declare the era at the very, very top, at least, that angle whoop racing is over. So first of all, you did a great job with that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you set your stuff up and how you fly? Want to move over here in case it's a little sunny?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, tell us a little bit about how you fly.
So yeah, I fly with an attitude that if I crash, I have to get up as fast as possible. I was actually making jokes about how I have like this ultra fast
turtle
quick switch.
I saw that
in
in one of your races. You're way out ahead. You crashed, but you got up again. I think you lost like 2 seconds.
I crashed every single race except for finals.
Wow. Yeah. And obviously, when you're flying on Acro, it's a lot easier to recover, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you fly the same rates that you fly on 5-inch?
Yeah.
Same?
Yeah.
And what setup are you using in terms of version, presets, anything like that? And tune, does that matter too?
I'm not using any presets. I'm using the stock tune on the Happy Model Express RS board.
Okay. What version of Betaflight?
4.3.
Okay.
4.3 on it, yeah.
And just the stock tune, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, are you using RPM filters?
No.
No, not even 4.8, 48 kilohertz, nothing.
No.
And you're not having problems with batteries.
No.
And what type of KV motors do you like to run?
25,000 kV.
Okay. And are you looking for higher, or is that good enough for you?
I mean, it depends on the race, depends on the track. If I'm going for like a really hot lap, I want to go higher KV, but I mean, the battery just doesn't last for the whole race, you know?
Yeah. Well, I want you to know that several top pilots have told me that you've inspired them. Even AK, I just talked to him right now. He said he saw you fly and that you can't reach that level unstabilized. How does it feel to kind of inspire a bunch of people to change?
It feels great, you know? I feel like I started a little revolution, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the first top race in Whoop history where an Acro pilot won against the top stabilized pilots in the world. But I think that's going to be a
the
thing.
most consistent out of any race I've flown, you know?
Yep. You know, that used to be the knock. I used to think about Acro, that it was faster, but it wasn't consistent enough.
Yeah.
Because in some of your previous races, I saw that you were faster, you lay down TQs, but then in the finals, you might get knocked out.
Yeah.
But this time, you were completely dialed in. I hear you are grinding like a maniac. Is that true?
Yeah, I grinded I actually have 6 or 7 days on YouTube of just, like, I flew 100 batteries that day, you know?
That's the way to do it. One of these days, you got to invite me out to Camp Camp Colorado with you. You've got a great setup. Thanks so much for showing us what's possible. It's a new era for Whoop racing. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Let me go inside and kind of grab a Whoop to illustrate some simple points. So, yeah, low production value. I'm not a YouTuber or anything. I just kind of do this for my diary. This is what I do. All right, so let's grab a Whoop off my wall. There's a couple missing. Once again, I've been hanging out with top pilots, which destroy a lot of drones because despite their skill, they like one-upping each other in outrageousness. And yeah, Levi and Min-Chan and Hajun and Noikal were in the pool at the beach, and they asked if they could take my drone out, and they did. They fired cannons of water at it and fell in the water, and I've got a couple broken Whoops. Anyway, but like I said, no harm, no foul. Let's grab, what are we gonna do? Why don't we go with, let's go with this old brushed Whoop here, which was, it runs my version of silverware, a fork that I made to tweak. That doesn't matter. I'm not going to talk about that. That's really old. But anyway, let's use this to illustrate some points here. So, one of the things that, that the improved KV does is that when you tilt your Whoop or your drone, any type of drone, you lose thrust. When you're pointed this way, all the thrust is going down. When you're pointed this way to go forward, some of the thrust is going backwards, so you lose some upward thrust. And with underpowered Whoops, if you tilt beyond a certain angle, you might just not be able to recover back in the day with some of the brush motors we were dealing with. And man, this is a nostalgia thing. Anyway, moving on. It's got my favorite camera that I ever used. I even used to use this huge heavy canopy from a 75-inch Whoop on it. But anywho, the bottom line is this. When you're using angle mode, you're limiting it, and that can help you. It can help you get out of attitudes that would, or positions of your aircraft that would be difficult to recover from. And because this is such a small craft, it's like balancing, there it goes, I'm not very good at it. When you have a big drone, it's easier to balance. It feels more stable. That's why Acro is so hard on this. It's like balancing something tiny on your finger, whereas it's easier to balance something bigger. But flying a Whoop on Acro feels like you're balancing a little tiny thing like this on your finger. So, for one, it's real sensitive and squirrely compared to bigger drones. Bigger drones just inherently have more stability because of that factor. Anyone who's tried to balance something tiny on their finger versus something large will understand that. I can be shaking my finger to try to balance this thing. I'm not good at this. All right. So anyway, there's certain things that you just can't do in stabilized mode that are faster. If you are able to sustain that position. So for example, in angle racing, they can actually get more aggressive about, in Acro racing, you can get more aggressive about your tilt. you can sustain that, better. There's certain types of obstacles that are incredibly awkward. They're, really acro obstacles that are in top races these days. Like, for example, corkscrews, when you have multiple gates and you kind of corkscrew through them. Some people, they're power loops, whatever you want to call them to understand it. When you're doing it with an angle whoop, you can't, actually invert it like that and corkscrew it like you would, if this was a 5-inch drone. With Acro, you can. So there's just a lot going on here that came into this. The skill level reached that point, the gear reached that point, but as it stands right now, there's definitive proof that at the very top, Acro is faster. And you don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to let some of the top pilots speak to this. Mason is a very thoughtful guy that I wanted to include on this, but man, we've been crossing paths, and I just need to get this video out the door because my computer's getting full of other videos that I need to get out the door. I use YouTube as my storage space, basically. It's for me more than anyone. And if anyone else enjoys it, that's fine. But anyway, I'm rambling. I don't have a script for this, but let me just put it this way. At the very top of whoop racing, it's going to be dominated by acro pilots from now on. And there will always be a place for angle whoops, and angle whoop racing will always be, a big thing. But it used to be kind of a truism that, even though you could race acro due to the instability of the gear, sometimes not being able to recover due to low KV motors or whatever, that you weren't going to be able to beat someone consistently who's on angle mode. Maybe you'll be able to beat him in some heats. A lot of times Acro got TQ in the past, but then would lose in the finals because you really got to keep it together. You don't really have any help. But on the other hand, there's other advantages, like not having to deal with the funky gyro all the time. I'm going to switch to Acro. I don't think I'm going to be better, to be honest, but the reason I'm going to do it is because I don't fly angle much anymore, and it's usually just the week before Whooptopia. I try to get used to it again. And I feel like maybe just switching to Acro will mean I will just simply fly whoops more. It's not just that transition. It's kind of very similar to the practice that I would be doing for any type of drone. So, this was rambly, this was long. I'm gonna probably cut this up before I edit it. But the top pilots have shown this year that, this is true. The angle mode is not the best anymore. At the top, if you have the skill level to keep up with it on Acro, yes, it might be the best for you. Yes, there will be plenty of people using it. And yes, we're going to have fun no matter what. That's what's important. But if you really want to beat the top whoop pilots in the world, and that's your aspiration, racing is going to be increasingly won by acro pilots going on. This year was an inflection point where a bunch of people learned that, and a bunch of people are switching to acro at the top. So, all right, I'm sure Minchan and Sweeper and Hajun are about to wake up and want to go fly. So I got to get this out the door, and sorry for the low production values. I ain't a YouTuber. I'm just some guy who uses YouTube as a diary. All right.